Hello and welcome everybody back to our final day of set reviewing here on TCGplayer.com. I'm Conley Woods. This is Shadows over Innistrad, Magic's latest set. This time around we're obviously doing things in video style, so if you want to go back and check out the previous 3 days you can. Of course, leave any feedback you have in the comments below. And yeah, today we'll be covering the double face cards, which otherwise known as flip cards. They're not technically flip cards, but they're, all the werewolf style stuff. As well as the multicolor stuff, and then going over my top 8 list, which should be brief, but just a quick wrap up of kind of where we think Standard's going to be going. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into to this final round of cards here. First up, I'm sure a card people were missing out in the white review: Avacyn herself, Archangel Avacyn. This card has so much going on that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around all in one go, and because of all that's going on, it's going to be a pretty versatile card. So when you look at a card like a Dragon Lord or Jutai, very, very strong control win condition, one of the strongest we've seen in a while, but it really didn't go into too many decks. It basically went into like Dragon Control, maybe Bant mid-range with it as the curve topper, and that was about it. Archangel Avacyn, on the other hand, kind of has the Restoration Angel role, where she's going to she's just going to fit in a lot more places, because a 4/4 flash flyer for 5 that gives everything indestructible, including herself, and then has vigilance thereon after, and has an entirely different ability that can factor in. Like, just the front side of this card is like potentially powerful enough just to play in a bunch of different decks. The Magic Online, or excuse me, Wizards of the Coast has this cool little functionality where you just get to click this to reveal it. So yeah, this card is just all good up front. You're already pretty happy. Whenever a non-angel creature you control dies, you transform it, and we end up with this. We go from pure Avacyn to pure Avacyn, the one that's purifying things. So 6/5, so we get an upgrade in stats, +2/+1, which is not bad. Loses vigilance, so you're not going to play defense as well, but that's fine because she's going to be wrathing everything else. Like, she does 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. That includes your creatures. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this card is, because of this side, adds an entirely new dimension to the card, where now you can play this as almost a wrath effect, if you will. It's not, it's not a like a planar outburst style wrath effect where you can rely on it to reset the board, but it does offer you some of that versatility, which is pretty awesome. It also hits opponents, so you can kill planeswalkers with this, even if you're not attacking with it. And I guess the trick that everyone was talking about is you blink this with you like wait till wait, when this creature transforms. Yeah, so it only does the 3 damage when you transform it. So you're supposed to blink it with Eldrazi, momentary. What the hell is his name? I don't know. I for some reason I can't remember his name. The blink guy, the 3-mana 3/3 that blinks things with Eldrazi. You're supposed to blink it, give things indestructible with this trigger on the stack. So you like wait for it to flip. You put this trigger on the stack, then you blink it, and you put this back into play and give everything indestructible, so everything lives. And you do that like over and over again. I don't know. Have fun with that if you want, but you can just play this card because it's got a lot of powerful abilities, and it's going to win you games in a bunch of different decks. Control, mid-range, obviously not really an aggro card, but yeah, this expect a lot out of this over the next few years. All right, moving down, we got Avacynian. Oh, by the way, the non-angel creature clause is relevant. Keep that in mind. People are going to miss that the first or second time they play with this. So you can't cast a second Archangel Avacyn and flip the first one. That's something important to keep in mind. All right, so this guy, the 4-mana 3/3 side's obviously terrible, and then the other side's like good, but it only lasts until this leaves the battlefield, so it's not a permanent removal. So you don't if you just exile something, the card might be playable. But the fact that like you get this effect and then it kind of sits out there as a vanilla dork, I don't know. It seems pretty difficult to trigger because you need to equip it. So you're playing a hill giant, you need to equip, and then yeah, I don't know. Moving on. All right, we got this guy's a little bit more playable. It's a bear. And then if you have 4 guys, you flip him. Or at the beginning of your upkeep, excuse me. If you have 4 guys, you flip him. And then he gets power and toughness equal number of creatures you control, so he should be at least a 4/4 right away. And at the end step, you get a 1/1. I think this guy is probably playable in like some type of token strategy. The biggest issue is that you need to live through the turn, no matter what you do with this guy, no matter how many creatures you have in play. He still needs to survive through a full turn before he does anything. because it doesn't trigger till the beginning of your upkeep. So I doubt that he'll be like a tier 1 or even 2 all-star or anything like that. But he might see a little bit of fringe play in some token decks, potentially against potentially as a sideboard card. I don't know. We'll see. Not super excited by him, but he's playable. Pious Evangel. This card I like mostly because of the flip. If you look at the other side, the way that they did the art, like the guy barely moves and like changes. I like that. I don't know. But whenever he or another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. That's cool, obviously. But this is a great ogre, so we need a lot to make it cool. And then we're sacrificing another permanent to transform this into a 2/4 Zulaport Cutthroat. I don't know. This might be playable in some like weird Rally the Ancestors style of deck, but outside of like something very aristocratsy, I'm not buying it because he's pretty bad rate, and he needs to put in a lot of mana. My favorite part about transform cards, double face cards by far, is that they have cool stories. Like this story is just awesome. Town Gossipmonger. We're tapping an untapped creature, so we're convincing somebody else, some gossip or whatever, and then we turn into this. Now, is this card playable? I thought about this one for a while. I'm not sure. So we have a 1/1 for 1 on the front side, but it is a human. That's probably the most important thing. Humans are going to come up as important time and time again. This Hanweir Militia Captain is also a human. This card is human, although I'm not too excited by it. So Hanweir Militia Captain and Gossipmonger, both human. But you do get a 2/3 has to attack each turn and then can fire breathe. So I don't know. It's probably not good enough since you have to play this, take an entire turn off, flip it, then you get a 2/3 that fire breeze. But it's like borderline close to playable if you really need like human synergies or something. I don't know. None of these were too exciting besides Avacyn. Avacyn's obviously quite exciting. The rest of these four lack in excitement. The new Delver is bad, unfortunately. It's good and limited, but you have to mill the top card every turn, and if it's instant or sorcery, you get a 5/4 flyer. Perfected form. Alright, moving on. Another clue guy. The Daring Sleuth. When you sacrifice a clue, you transform him. So this is obviously a payoff. What do we get? What do we get? What do we get? A 3/2 prowess that when he deals combat damage to a player, you investigate. I don't know. See, like this story just doesn't work for me. It doesn't connect as well. The art is awesome on this, but in terms of this being a build-around, I would claim that it's definitely not a build-around since the payoff is that you transform it, and then that side doesn't really give you another payoff. So, this card's not really play. It's a 2-mana 2/1. Is that true? Yeah, 2-mana 2/1. I would not include it in this. Over here we have our clue build-up. I guess I'll write this guy down. I don't think he's great though. The Daring Sleuth. All right, moving on. Startled Awake is a sweet card, and this card actually might be playable in Constructed as just like an anti-control card. So the premise here is you mill your opponent for 13, and then you pay 5, return this from your graveyard to play Transformed, which is then a 1/1 with Skulk, and then when it deals combat damage, you return it to its owner's hand. When it comes back is this. So overall, you're spending, this is 5, 4, and so the loop is 13. I was making sure of that because that's the number that always comes up in this format. But yeah, you spend 4 mana twice and 5 mana once to like continue like make this loop happen over and over again. So it's like 13 mana. It's kind of cool. But yeah, the reason this might see play in Constructed is obviously it could be in a mill deck. I'm gonna ignore that though because I don't think there's quite enough stuff to make mill work yet. But as just a threat against an opposing control deck, this just it has a lot of resilience while also being pretty pretty real in terms of win condition just on the first cast in a control and control mirror. If you remember back to last Innistrad, blue and black control was like one of the best decks, and the mirror matches were always Nephalia Johnyard based, and people were just milling each other out, and the games went 25 turns or 30 turns. In that situation, you don't have Nephalia Johnyard anymore, but a single casting of Startled Awake will like often get you the same result. And then if this gets countered or something like that, or it's not enough to just have it resolve once, you pay your 5 mana, you return your 1/1 to play, you get in like your opponent either has to waste a removal spell on it, which is awesome for you, or you get in your damage, you draw it back again, and you kind of get this weird card advantage loop that just grinds out the game. So that seems kind of interesting. I don't think this will be worthy of like building a mill deck around itself. 13 cards is a lot, but 4 mana is also quite a bit, and the process of getting this back in your hand is not a quick one. So, yeah, interesting card though. I like the story, of course. Everyone likes the story. Thing in the eyes. All right, got a 0/4 defender. And then, so this is an instant and sorcery build around. So this could theoretically have gone in our mono blue spell deck that we looked at. The problem I have with it is if you're playing this in a mono blue spell deck, like Jace, I can see playing because you only need him to live for 1 turn and he's good. This you probably need to live for 2 or 3 turns, and if you're not playing that many creatures, he just feels like he'll be out there too, ready to just be eaten up by whatever 3 or 4 removal spells your opponent has that they don't have targets for. That said, obviously you cast 4 instants and sorceries and you get this thing, which is a 7/8 and bounces every other creature. So, I don't know. It's kind of cool. It does fit the theme of our deck a little bit. I want to explore it there. I could certainly see this in constructed elsewhere. Just being a 0/4 blocker is kind of good, and it doesn't take a lot to turn this into a monstrosity, if you will. The last Ludwig's test subject, if you guys remember that crap. Yeah, maybe some of these filters. Ludwig's. Oh, was it Ludwig's? Maybe it wasn't. I'm spelling wrong. Oh wait, that quantity. I do. Damn it. Alright, I'm just gonna assume I don't remember the name of it. Anyway, it was a 0/3 that you paid a bunch. You paid like 10 mana over. You had to remove 5 counters off it or something like that, and you paid 10 mana and flipped into some big thing. This is like significantly easier to flip, both in limited and constructed, I would say. So it'll be interesting to see where this picks up play because, like I said, it's not a terrible front side. A 2 mana 0/4 blocker is okay against aggro, and obviously this thing's insane against aggro. So cool card. The Uninvited Geist. One of the more ridiculous names in the set, of course. The Uninvited Geist here. 2/2 Skulk that gets in and then turn becomes a 3/3 unblockable. Not really constructed card, but it's a cool card. Alright. A Cursed Witch. So I actually pulled up all the cards that target your opponent because I think this card's interesting in that it does something really unique, and I wanted to at least explore what that did. So basically this gets everything your opponent wants to do. This is cost less, and then once this dies, it comes back as an enchantment that enchants your opponent, makes all spells that you target them with cost 1 less, and they get drained for 1 at the beginning of their upkeep. So I went ahead and just did like a little search for what. Oops, I gotta move this up a little bit. No, Magic Online. Chill out, bro. Okay, that's it. I thought that was it. I just want to verify. So I was like, what can we do with? Because it's just such a unique, weird effect. This 1 less to cast. Like, what can we do with this? There is the Triskaidekaphobia deck where Healing Hands could be a thing since it's the only card that gains your opponent life. So I looked at that, but that's probably pretty bad. Then of course, all the 1 mana cards that could target your opponent, those don't count for this search. So like Duress and whatnot, I left those off. But that said, you still have some like other good discard. You have Transgress the Mind. Mind Rot is probably playable. Infinite Obliteration. This is probably not playable. I literally grabbed everything in this case, so you can see a lot of like bad cards. Grave Birthing is kind of weird, an interesting one. I like Colligan's Command a lot in here. Obviously, the burn spells are all pretty strong at this role. Talon of the Telepath is a card I want to see play, but it just never does. I don't think any of these things are like cool enough to get me to play Infectious Curse, but I don't know. It's a really like. I don't it makes you think. You want to build a deck around this. I just don't know what to do with it. Also, the fact that you can't just like even if this were just a card, like say this were 4 mana, that is enough of a brain twister that we have to deal with playing a 4 mana 4/2 that we have to like flip first. It's kind of frustrating, but whatever. That's a card to keep your eye on, I guess, just because it's so unique. This card, on the other hand, is also pretty unique, but I don't know if it fits in. I didn't include it in my Vampire deck. Look at my Vampire deck over here. I have Kalidas as my only 4-drop currently. I thought about including one of this, but I'm just not sure. So a 4 mana 4/4 is kind of underwhelming. I guess is the main reason that I just didn't want to play it because the payoff here is not that exciting. Because when you do discard a card and flip him, you get a thing that basically counter the removal. So you get a hexproof guy that's going to counter the removal, or an indestructible guy that's going to counter the wrath. In terms of how it affects this, and then you have to get back in. You have to attack with this creature again, get him unblocked, which it should be easy, and pay 2 colors and a black, and then you flip him back over again. So it seems like a lot of work to keep your 4/4 round. It seems like an awesome sideboard card against wraths and whatnot, because it is a vampire. It does fit in that tribal deck. I just wasn't sold on it as like a main deck inclusion. Heir of Falkenrath, on the other hand, I did. If you look over here for this guy, the cool thing about this is, so it's 2 mana, 2/1, like, you know, medium right there. But we discard a card and we flip, it's no other activation cost, which is insane because of madness. We have, you know, Falkenrath Gorger, which gives all guys madness. We have Incorrigible Use, which is madness. We have Asylum Visitor, which is madness. But, you know, we discard a card. We flip this into a 3/2 flyer. That's crazy good. 2 mana, 3/2 flyer. That's a vampire. Like, definitely sign me up. Awesome card. Good in vampire decks. Might be good in just other aggro decks that just want a 2 mana 3/2 flyer, which is a lot of decks, I suppose. All right, moving on. We got the Kindly Stranger, the old lady. All right, she's got pretty cool story to her, I guess, but I don't know if she's playable. On the other side, you get to kill a creature, which is like insane and limited. So definitely first pick this card in limited, I think. Well, I guess it depends on how easy delirium is to get. But in limited, in theory, you have a 3 mana 2/3, which is not bad. You flip it at instant speed with delirium, paying this mana here, and then you just get to kill a creature and end up with a 4/3. Seems pretty insane limited. I wouldn't really worry about that in constructed though. All right, 3 mana 3/3. Werewolf Claws turns into a 4/3 that gives your guys +1/+0 and trample. Keep in mind that all of the transform werewolves are humans and werewolves on their front side, so they work for both our little werewolf deck over here that we're working on, even though I don't think we got anywhere with it. And they work with human decks, potentially. They're not a human on the backside. They're only a werewolf there, but, you know, keep that in mind. This guy's probably not good enough, but he is an Anthem, so, you know, I'm going to write him down for the werewolf deck. I don't think the werewolf deck's going anywhere, to be honest with you. Just not quite enough cards in one set for it. Whereas vampires, you know, had 3 sets of other vampires helping it out, so that's why I think that deck is much more realistic. All right, Convicted Killer, Gray Ogre that turns into a 4/4. Meh. 5 mana 5/4 that turns into a 6/5 trample. Oh, no, menace. I got the trample wrong. Meh. This guy is potentially pretty good. So we have 3 mana 3/2 haste, and obviously Werewolf Claws to flip it. And then when it does flip, every werewolf you play from there on out, you just get to transform it right away. So I think that clause is super interesting. I don't think there are enough good cards you do actually want to flip. It's not just oh no, it is just werewolves. I thought this was the one that turned into non-humans. I don't think there are enough werewolves right now that you actually want to flip right away, that you're willing to jump through the hoop of getting this thing flipped and then which is front side name. I don't think you're willing to like go through those multiple hoops to get this working, but at the same time, I'm always for these very unique effects because they're always somewhat abusable, and they tend to not be. The reason they tend to not be abused is because there's not enough of that effect in the format, or there's not a redundant version of it. But at the same time, it's a, you know, things sit on a very swingy kind of back and forth where, you know, one werewolf gets printed, all of a sudden this card becomes playable because that one werewolf is just, you know, out of this world crazy good if you play it flipped up or something. So a cool card, probably not good enough, but got to keep it in mind. All right, so we got Ashmouth Hound here. For everybody who remembers the Ashmouth Hound, that was from, should have, boom. 2/1 when it gets blocked, deals 1 damage to that creature, and then it flips into a 3/2 that deals 2 damage to blocking creatures. So if you enjoyed losing to Ashmouth Hound because you didn't know what the hell was going on with the 1 damage trigger, enjoy losing to this card even more. Alright, that's mostly a limited card. Ooh, this is one of my favorite stories in the set. Second Invasion is an awesome card. Idea here being that this bug jumps in your back, starts eating at your, doing whatever. You're a host. It's a parasite, making you attack each turn. And then when your thing dies, it comes back as a 3/4 bug living in your skin. You metamorphosis into this, you Kafka into this skin shredder guy. I actually think this card is like potentially constructed playable. It's really, really cool, and it's cheap enough. Like if you're able to flip this on turn 2 or turn 3, and you get a 3/4 out of the deal, like that seems pretty awesome. Now I don't know how easy it is to actually play this on something and then kill it right, because you're investing a card in this. But if you can play this on turn 1 and then on turn 2 you bolt your opponent's creature, like a Delver or something, or you Lavamancer on turn 1 and you play this on turn 2 and kill it, or something crazy like that, then you get effectively a 1-mana 3/4 that came out on turn 1 or 2 or 3. So that seems pretty exciting, but I love the story even more than the potential play application. Okay, so this Werewolf is one that I was trying to compare it to Reckless Wave. Reckless Wave, for those of you, again, that did not play, should have plenty of Reckless Waves. You got a 1-mana 1/1 Werewolf, and on the other side it's a 3/2. So here we have 1/1 haste, so we're strictly better on the front half. We just get in a free damage, which is cool. Well, I guess we're not strictly better. This is a human rogue. This is a human werewolf. Ooh. But you get in for 1 damage with your hasty werewolf, and then on the other side we have a 2/2 menace. So we gain a keyword, we lose a point of strength. Arguably, that is better than a 3/2 because it's more likely to get in the early turns when your opponent just doesn't have any blockers. So I think this card is probably better than Reckless Wave was. And Reckless Wave was definitely a constructed playable card, albeit not a super exciting one. And this fits right into our wolf deck, as it is a 1/1 haste wolf. Bam. Get in the deck, wolf. All right, moving on. Autumnal Gloom, we got an enchantment that flips. So this mills you, and then when you have Delirium, it flips into a 4/4 hexproof, which is a really cool card, I guess. Like, 3-mana 4/4 hexproof is pretty cool. I guess it has trample too, which is even a bonus. 3-mana 4/4 trample hexproof is pretty cool. So if you have Delirium, this is just like, in theory, if you have the aggro green Delirium deck, we were looking at green yesterday, you can play the 2-mana 3/4 with Delirium. You can play the Soul Swallower, which is the 4-mana 3/3 discard. Boom, Soul Swallower. You can play the, I guess you could even get away with running the Ooze, maybe. Moldgraph Scavenger is the 2-mana 3/4 that I was talking about. I guess you could probably even try to play the Inexorable Blob, just because you want another 3-drop, but that's a lot of like really efficient green creatures. And with this being an enchantment, Autumnal Gloom being an enchantment, that makes it even more likely that you're going to be able to trigger Delirium in this deck with all these cheap creatures. Like, this deck seems pretty exciting in terms of just like 16 creatures that all trigger off of the same graveyard condition. Now make that graveyard condition be met, and then play with your kind of awesome beatdown green deck. So it's something that I'm definitely going to want to brew with. I'm going to look at more at this card because I think it's pretty cool. I just love the idea of hexproof creatures that are cheap like this. You can do a lot of things with this. Throw some enchantments on it. Throw some auras on it, which you might want in the deck anyway. Maybe you play Skin Invasion, because when it goes to the graveyard for the second time, it's an enchantment there. I don't know. Cool card though. Alright, this card is like the bee's knees of werewolves. So this is probably the best uncommon werewolf in the set, I would imagine. It's a bear that you pay 3 to look at the top 3 cards and grab a creature from them. And then when you, which is awesome because that's something to do with your mana. So you don't have to cast a spell. You could just like activate this once or twice and not cast a spell. And then when you successfully do that, you flip him over. He's a 3/3 that makes your creatures cost 1 less. So you get to basically take all the card advantage you're getting from the front side, turn that into a mana advantage from the other side, and then if you play 2 creatures in a turn, you just flip this guy right back and start drawing more creatures with this side. It's like the perfect card where it's like a card you actively want both sides of. This card is like A+. I'm in love with it. Crazy good and limited, I'm sure. It's got to be playable and constructed. I would be very surprised if it were not. It's the 3 casting cost the 3 cost on the activation here is a little bit much, but I would still give that card a high thumbs up. Hermit of the Natternolls. That's a ridiculous name. All right, so this card seems like a really strong sideboard card. When your opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw a card. So obviously we're fighting against control decks here, and it's a 3-mana 2/3, so that's not that bad. The huge benefit here being that, in theory, if your opponent is playing a control deck with a bunch of counter spells, this will also potentially flip during their turn because they're not necessarily going to be playing a bunch of sorcery speed stuff. If that happens, you get a 3/5 that when they cast a spell during your turn, you draw 2 cards. So pretty cool design here. Should be a reasonable sideboard card that some number of decks take advantage of. This is a good one to put in play off of Collected Company, because you can surprise your opponent where they go to pass the turn or whatever, expecting to do something on your turn, and you put this in the play off Collected Company, and now they're kind of gotten. All right, 2-mana 2/1 that flips into a 4/2 with trample. Playable, I would say. Oh wait, let me write this guy down because he's definitely a sideboard card. Oh wait, why did he go to? Oh, whatever. Hermit of the Natternolls. No wait, what? Yeah, why did it go down here? What's down to Bygone Bishop? That's weird. Hermit of the Natternolls. Come on, if you don't love that name, I don't know. Alright, 2-mana, 3/3. Can't attack unless you control a creature of power 4 or greater. That's kind of a difficult clause, but it is a good blocker, regardless. And then it flips into a 4/4. So the idea here being that if you have 2 of these out, I guess the second one enables the first one, plus it could just start attacking. I would say this card is definitely playable. I don't know if it's going to be as good as the other werewolves that don't require as difficult of a quest to pull off to actually be able to be a reasonable creature. Like I said, this is a good defensive blocker. So like if there's blue-green control or something, though, you might just want this to like come down against aggro and be a wall. This card's very cool. Power token is equal number of cards in your hand. Draws a card when it comes into play, and then when it flips, gets vigilance and trample. It checks your opponent's hand and adds that to the total, whatever you had going on. So pretty cool card overall. I don't know if it's constructed playable. Usually these Morrow effects are not that constructed playable, but this one does replace itself right away. I don't know. I'm not sold on it being a constructed card. It's a super sweet card though. I don't know. I like the art. I like the idea. I like all the effects, everything going on. I guess the second side's a little underwhelming to me, but vigilance and trample are certainly not minor abilities to pick up on this size of a creature. All right. What we got? We got a couple of artifacts left. Oh, yeah, the Westvale Abbey coming up. Solitary Hunter is a 4-mana 3/4 that turns into a 4-mana 5/6 with no abilities, so probably not good enough. Arlinn got here. Planeswalker time. This one is super sweet and probably one of the reasons that some of our werewolves are kind of mediocre in this set because they wanted to give the cool space to her. So +1, you give something +2/+2, vigilance and haste. That's a huge set of abilities, haste being the #1 thing there. +2/+2 and vigilance are both nice because this works on a creature the turn it comes down into play, but then every turn thereafter you're threatening a ton of damage with that haste ability. Like this is strong in the double strike deck that we hinted about. For anyone that is wondering about what double strike deck I'm talking about. Basically, there is it's double strike 2 words, I think it is. There is a 3-mana +1/+1 in double strike. And we also saw a 2-mana Scourge Wolf, which is 2-mana 2/2 first strike that gets double strike. There's also a 3-mana 2/2 double strike, just generic thing. There's Needle Spires, which is land, which is pretty easy to pull off. There's no green double strike stuff right now, but there's enough double strike stuff that I think that deck is potentially a thing. And giving +2/+2 and vigilance and haste is exactly what that kind of deck wants, especially the haste part. But then we have an entire additional ability here where we're putting a 2/2 wolf into play. This one's kind of Garrick ability, if you will. Put a 2/2 wolf into play, and then we transform this. What do we transform it into? What do we get, Bob? What do we get? All right, we get +1. All your creatures get +1/+1 and trample. Not bad. Pretty strong. Obviously, this card is going straight into the werewolf shell, that whatever that is, by the way. Let What is it? Arlinn. Alright. -1. She deals 3 damage to our creature or player, and then she transforms back. So that she casts a spell, I guess, and she transforms back, which is kind of cool. And then -6 is you get an emblem with creatures you control have haste, and tap, deal damage to our creature or player to its power. So pretty cool card overall. The real big abilities here are being that we get 0 mana to make a 2/2, 1 mana to +2/+2, vigilance and haste, and then the -1 for 3 damage. These other 2 abilities are nice, and you will use them some amount of the time for sure. But those other 3 abilities on the card, like if those are the only 3 abilities, if this -1 to deal 3 was on the other side, that card would already be insane. So the fact that we get an ultimate on top of that, and we get a +1/+1 in trample mode is just like gravy. This card should be tier 1 constructed, potentially modern playable. Giving haste is strong enough that it's potentially modern playable. And yeah, definitely does the green-red planeswalker. Like this is better than Xenagos, I would say. And Xenagos saw a lot of constructed play. All right, Harvest Hand. 2/2 for 3. When it dies, you return it as a equipment. That gives menace and +1/+1. I guess it only gives menace if you're human. So meh. Neglected Heirloom, +1/+1. When the equipped creature dies, you have to spend the extra mana. But this is already a Leonid Scimitar. 1 mana, +1/+1 for 1. And we transform it into +3/+3 and first strike. But my issue with this is the equip cost goes up pretty substantially. Going up to 3 is kind of annoying. So this might be playable in like the equipment deck. I'm not sure. For anybody that doesn't know about the equipment deck, I'll pull it up. Equipment and auras. It's not really a deck, I guess. It's a bunch of cards. There's enough cards in the new set to care about equipment. Plus we have stuff like this floating around. Not that. This guy, I guess, is one. There's the 3 mana 2/3 that mirrors this. It gets +1 strength for each or +1 power for each equipment you control. Flipping that, yeah. I don't know. I guess it's a card. Gargoyle. This card's probably playable. It's a 1 mana 2/2 defender, which some decks might just want against aggro. Just I just need to put out a guy early on and deal with your whatever. And then if you ever do get to a reasonable point in the game where you can spend the 6 mana on this, you get a 4/2 flyer. I wouldn't call this card like great or anything like that, but it might fill a role of early defense against whatever. Westvale Abbey is our final card here. This land should be awesome. It should see play in a reasonable number of places. So taps for a colorless mana, which is already big because of Eldrazi, obviously. 5 tap, pay life, and you get a 1/1 white and black human cleric. That's potentially good in the human tribal. It's potentially good in control, just making 1/1s. And then you could pay 5, tap, and sacrifice 5 creatures, excuse me, and you get a gigantic flying, hasty, lifesteal, indestructible guy. So Ormondal, Profane Prince. So this card is obviously insanely powerful. It makes me want to look at creature token strategies. The Eldrazi already do a pretty good job of this. They have multiple cards that just put out a bunch of tokens because you need an Eldrazi spawn to make mana. So I definitely want to figure out what the best shell for this card is. So it's a card that I will be doing brewing with often and early. It is oh no, it's not legendary. How is Westvale Abbey not legendary? This guy's legendary, which makes sense, but I'm kind of surprised the other side's not legendary. So that makes brewing with the card a little bit easier. And the fact that this has lifelink is huge in terms of like its effectiveness on the actual board. So a card I'm pretty excited about. I imagine it will see plenty of constructed play, even if it doesn't get activated many times. To turn into this side, people are going to play it just because it makes 1/1s and because it taps for colorless mana and does things. So, all right, that's it for the double face cards. We'll be right back with the multicolored cards. There's not nearly as many of them. I am Conley Woods. This is TCGplayer.com doing Shadows over Innistrad set review. Peace.